For the homework, you also had to fill out figures 4.1.1, 4.1.5. We will discuss them soon in quite some detail, in fact. And we will see that this is, in fact, an experiment where we measure your risk and uncertainty attitudes. But before that, I want to present some theory, the theory that we use to analyze the experiment. That theory is subjective expected utility. You've seen special versions of it before. It is in the framework of the decision-making on uncertainty. So there's a state space, there are outcomes, prospects map states to outcomes. This theory has probabilities and utilities, but well, we've seen special cases before, but in fact, in the first meeting, we saw a case where utilities were assumed to be known. Your utility linear means it's known. In the second meeting, we saw a special case where we assume probabilities to be known. But now, in practice, usually both are unknown, and then we have to do more work to get them. So that's what we're going to turn to now. How can we handle situations where both are unknown? So this theory, it assumes that there exist probabilities on events and there exist utilities on outcomes. But now both may be unknown, so we have to work to get them, such that this formula represents, maybe you remember from this notation, this is a notation of an prospect assigning an outcome x1 to event e1, xn to event en. Here you see the formula. You see we do assume probabilities of the events to be used. They exist, but we don't know them. We have to work to get them. Utilities of outcomes, same story. And then we do multiplication, addition, as you saw before. That evaluates, that represents preferences. That's the subjective expected utility theory. And I told you about this operational approach of this course, that usually we try to show immediately how things are related to empirical reality, how they can be measured. We're going to do that now again. But now the task will be more difficult. In the first meeting, we saw how to measure probabilities, but we assumed utilities to be known, so we could use them. Second meeting, we measured utility, but we assumed probabilities to be known, and we could measure them. Could use them. In both of these approaches, we were in fact dealing with linear equalities, linear inequalities, which makes life quite easier. Right now, we don't have that linearity. We have a general, for a mathematician, we are now working with a ring structure, which is more complex. So how should we do now? If we want to measure the utilities, we want to use the probabilities, but we don't know them. If we want to measure the probabilities, we have to use the utilities, but we don't know them. So what to do? We don't know how to proceed right now. So it may look like a daunting task, but at this moment, but in fact it will not be so very difficult, and I will show you next how it goes. We'll use figures 4.1.1 up to 4.1.5 to do it, but those figures, I'm going to show them to you now. Each one I'll show a few seconds on the screen so that you have them available on the screen. It may be easier if you have the book available and you see them from the book, but maybe for some of you, so I show each figure a few seconds so you have them also here. Okay, now comes next slide, full of text, and I'll tell you what the plan is, what we're going to do. Here, there are 5 exercises. You're supposed to read them and work on them and solve them by yourself. What we're doing now, in fact, is analyzing your risk or uncertainty attitude in the experiment. That's what this is about. And we are assuming expected utility to do so. Now, we're using this, so we are assuming that you were maximizing expected utility. But as usual, often in economics, we do this in an as-if sense. So I'm not really assuming that you determine numerical probabilities in your mind, then you determined numerical utilities of the outcomes in your mind, then you calculated the formula as we just saw it. You worked more intuitively. But still, we assume that in some subconscious as-if manner, so that still this expected utility formula captures your behavior. And we're going to analyze it now. So this will be a sort of online tutorial. So you're supposed now in a moment to, in the next recordings, I'll show the solutions, but you're supposed to work on exercise yourself and find the solution by yourself before seeing it. And then after you can see my solutions, and I have extra comments, elucidations, so still good to listen to them. Now I can imagine that mathematically oriented students, C students, and economists maybe also, can solve all these exercises in one blow. Usually in my course, the algebra is not difficult from a mathematical perspective. It's more the concepts that may be more difficult rank dependent later, maybe a bit non-trivial, but most is not so difficult in this course. So then that if you can do that, it's the best. Just solve all the exercise in one blow and see the solutions. But if you are more empirically oriented and psychology students, people with psychology background, then such algebra is not really your cup of tea. You may find it more difficult to see what you should do here. Then you can first try a bit yourself, and if you don't know what to do, you can see how I did a bit of the solution, and then if you see the first part of the solution, you can try again yourself. In the following recordings with the solution, I will sometimes encourage you to stop the video and work from there on by yourself. So then you can do it in several steps. Anyway, with this video, you have much liberty about the pace and the way in which you solve the exercises. But I'm going to stop the recording here now, and then the solutions come in next recordings.